And it's a pleasure to be here today at the Dar al-Hijra. What a beautiful place. I love natural light. I'm also a professional photographer, and I come into this room, and what a joyous place. So it's really great to be here. I want to start off by also thanking y'all for having this series for seniors. Does anybody know what percentage of Fairfax County citizens are over the age of 55? About, any guesses? 20%? You're close. 60, 54? Well, a little bit over, although we're getting there. We're 34? I think you come the closest. We're about 25%, 24, 25% of the population of Fairfax County is over the age of 50, 55. And that number is going up. By 2020, the county projects it could be 27 or 28%. And that means a lot of things. It means, number one, that there are a lot of experienced, seasoned, talented seniors out there, a lot of whom are still in the workforce, a lot of who are not in the workforce, who have a lot to offer to the rest of the community. And the other side of that is there are a lot of seniors in Fairfax County who need help, who need assistance. And so I'd like to talk about that today, but I want to emphasize the importance of what senior volunteers bring to the table. Just a little background on me. I started out with RSVP, and we'll talk about RSVP in a minute, but I started out with RSVP about a year ago. I was unemployed, or underemployed as they like to say, and I wanted to give back to my community. I come from a family and a community of volunteers. And so I went to RSVP. I actually went a year early, and they wouldn't let me in because I wasn't 55 yet. But I went in when I was 55, and they asked me all these questions, and they said, you know, what are you interested in? And I said, well, I've got a background in journalism. I've worked in newspapers all over Fairfax County and so on. And I take pictures, and they said, well, have you ever heard of this organization called the Northern Virginia Senior Olympics? And I said, no, I haven't. And they said, well, we think you'd be perfect. They need a public relations person. So I went over to the Senior Olympics. I'd really never heard about this organization. It's an incredible organization. They have a 2-week competition every year that anyone over the age of 50 is eligible for. All over Northern Virginia, whatever sport you're interested in, they do it. And they said, you want to be on the board? And I said, sure. So I went on the board. I started doing all this public relations work for them. And then wouldn't you know it, about 3 months later, I went back to RSVP and the coordinator that I was working with at that point and said, would you be interested in working here as our public relations coordinator? And the rest is history. I say that for two reasons. Number one, I'm just turned 56, I think, last September, about 56 and a half. And I don't think everyone has a true appreciation for the value of seniors because we've been on both sides of that. And I can tell you that RSVP and all the volunteer organizations that depend on seniors value, again, the maturity, the expertise, and the experience. And we'll talk about that some more as we go on. So I'd like to go through this real quick just to give you some background on what RSVP is. RSVP stands for Retired Senior Volunteer Program. So some of our folks are seniors. Well, I guess technically they're all seniors, but some of them are retired, some of them aren't. We are a joint project. We're a program of Volunteer Fairfax, Volunteer Arlington, which isn't that far away from here, and then Volunteer Alexandria. And those are sort of our three major sponsors. And then we have about 30 nonprofits. Let me ask you another question. In Fairfax County, just Fairfax County, how many nonprofits do you think there are just in the county we live in? 1,000. That's a good guess. Any other guesses? There are 3,000 nonprofits in Fairfax County. And there are 5,000 in Northern Virginia, and every single one of them needs volunteers. And as a matter of fact, I'm here to tell you, and I doubt that the center here is no different, that without volunteers, and I'm sure a lot of you already are volunteering to do stuff here, without volunteers, this would be a much different place. You know, we live in a county, you know, we're always told that we live in the richest county in the world, and we do. We're very, very blessed. We've got a great school system. We've got a wonderful safety net of social services. But if you talk to anyone who, and including some of the folks who have spoken before me here, none of the things that are done in this county or Northern Virginia or anywhere really could not be done to the complete totality of, I'm searching for a better word there, but they couldn't be done the way they're done if it wasn't for volunteers. And so you might look sometimes and say, well, you know, they've got all these programs, and they do, and they're run by incredible people, and they've got a lot of tax money going into them, which is great, but without volunteers, simply, to be honest with you, most of the programs that especially senior citizens take advantage of probably wouldn't be in existence. RSVP is a federally funded program. We're part of the Corporation for National and Community Service. There are 3 separate offshoots: senior companions, foster grandparents, and RSVP. RSVP has been around since technically 71, but it went national in 1972. And in 2017, more than 46 million hours of volunteer time was generated by RSVP. And the average volunteer hour, at least in Northern Virginia, is valued at about $24, $26 an hour. So if you multiply that 46 million by 26, we're talking billions of dollars. And again, it doesn't matter how much taxes we pay, or there's no way that you can come close to the value that volunteers, especially senior volunteers, bring to the table. And in the state of Virginia, again, RSVP is the biggest volunteer program on this level. 441 different project sites, 4,600 people, and that number is growing every month. Now, locally, as I mentioned before, we're supported by Volunteer Fairfax, Volunteer Arlington, and Volunteer Alexandria. And why should you join RSVP? Why is that so important? Well, number one, to be able to give back to your community, which, again, I'm guessing a lot of you guys are probably already doing that. How many people in here right now doing volunteer work? Good. Good. And I bet you there are other folks in here that are doing volunteer work and don't even realize it. You know, if you bring a meal to a sick friend, you're doing volunteer work. If you're keeping an eye on your neighborhood, or you're part of Community Watch, you're doing volunteer work. If you're driving a neighbor to service every week, you're doing volunteer work. And the great thing about what we do is, what RSVP in particular, is we do not try to tell people you've got to work a certain amount of hours. There's certain volunteer organizations where they'll get you in and they'll say, you've got to work 10 hours a week. Now, do we have opportunities like that? Yes, we do. But we have a lot of opportunities where if you work 1 hour a month, it makes a world of difference. And because I know everybody's busy, and it's so funny, you know, I talk to sometimes retired people, and there's always this thing, well, when you're retired, you're sitting off on a beach somewhere, or at the pool, you know, or watching TV all day. Most of the retired people I know are busier as retirees as they were working. So and we understand that. So we don't try to, you know, we try to have a different opportunity available for everybody. Like I said, we have 30 different, out of all those 3,000 nonprofits in Fairfax County, and 5,000 in Northern Virginia, because we serve all Northern Virginia, we've boiled it down to about 30 of the best groups. Those are groups that we've worked with, that we trust, that we know are doing good work. They're ethically run. They're run by good people who know what the landscape and what the situation is. And they cover a variety of opportunities. Some other reasons for joining RSVP, we have social events. We have a lot of social events. You know, it's tough when you get to a certain age it gets a little harder to meet people sometimes. Now, you guys belong, part of a faith community, and that's a great way to meet people, and it's a great way to make connections. We expand that even further. Last week, for instance, we had an event at Wolf Trap National Park for the Performing Arts over in Vienna, where we had a luncheon for our volunteers. We had some of the folks that we work with there to talk about volunteer work, and then we gave everybody a tour of Wolf Trap. It was really a fun event. We had about 50, 60 people, totally free. So we do a lot of things where we want to bring people together from all different ways of life, from all different backgrounds. And then the other thing about how we do our matching, I think, is something that really needs to be discussed. We're here for you. It's not the other way around. When we have an orientation, after the orientation is over, the orientations last about an hour. After the orientation is over, you will get a phone call from our volunteer coordinator, and she'll ask you, what are you interested in? What are your strengths? What don't you want to do? And then once we have that, we have a book which is like this thick. It's like an old-fashioned telephone book of 200 plus opportunities. Then we go through those opportunities, and we give you some alternatives. Let's just say I had gotten in the Olympics, and 2 weeks of the Olympics, I'm like, this is not what I want to do. I'm not into sports. All I had to do was call up the volunteer coordinator and say, Nadia, I need something else, and she would find something else for me to do. It's that simple. Now, a lot of volunteer organizations can't do that because they only deal with maybe one or two causes. We deal with so many, and that we can have that flexibility. So I guarantee you, whatever you're interested in, we'll find something for you. We also have monthly service projects. The other thing about volunteering, especially for seniors, that a lot of people don't think about are health benefits. They've actually done study after study after study that shows that people who volunteer live longer, live healthier lives, live less stressed lives. We're all trying to live, especially in a busy area like Northern Virginia. I mean, just driving from here to Seven Corners, which I know isn't that far, but can be stressful at certain times of the day. Well, they've done studies that say that people who volunteer actually feel better. It reduces their stress level. They feel happier. And I talk to a lot of volunteers, and we have these folks talk about why do they like to RSVP? Why do they? Now, Ken Kozloff was a hospital administrator, very successful. He used to be CEO of Alexandria NOVA Hospital. Ken volunteers hundreds of hours a year. Now, again, he's an extreme. Down at Providence Recreation Center, which is, again, maybe 10 minutes from here, he helps autistic children learn how to swim. He mentors people for financial issues. He does, you name it, he does it. But he enjoys, he says, I love to help others find out what their goals are. I love to help them achieve those goals, whether their goal is to teach an autistic child to swim from one side of the pool to the other, or helping a stroke victim learn how to swim using only one arm. And what he says is unique about RSVP is the approach that RSVP takes. We help you find what you're looking for, not the other way around. And I can't emphasize that enough. This gentleman here, Mike McCormick, he volunteers hundreds of hours for a program called Vita Cash. Has anybody here filed their taxes? Yeah. Vita Cash is a great program. They're located all over Fairfax County, and they are means tested, so you have to be within a certain income level. But if you go to this Vita Cash Center, they will help you file your taxes. And last year, Mike and his cadre of volunteers helped save people in Northern Virginia $10 million in tax returns. And Mike so he uses his expertise, and I asked Mike, I said, Mike, why do you volunteer? He said, well, I moved to Arlington about 5 years ago. My wife unexpectedly passed away, but my wife always told me successful people have to give back. And so he got into the VITA program. And Mike's another example of just somebody who just does an incredible amount of work. and he's in his 60s. Shelley Brosnan, another wonderful person, volunteers actually in the volunteer Fairfax office, worked for the federal government for 30-something years. And why she likes it is she says, I meet wonderful people, and it makes me feel good. And then she also likes it because it makes her feel more part of the community. Wolf Trap, again, we'll talk about that again. We staff volunteers out there. Our volunteers, if you're interested in music or plays or productions, they help usher, they help take tickets. And that's another situation where, I don't know if anyone here has been to Wolf Trap lately, but the tickets at Wolf Trap are a lot less expensive than they are at, let's say, Jiffy Lube Live or Merriweather Post. And the reason for that is because, well, it's federally funded partially, well, in one thing, but the other part of it is because they've got volunteers out there doing these jobs, and it saves them a lot of money, and it enables, again, Wolf Trap to be much more accessible to a much more wider part of the population. I want to close with a short video, and
there are so many people that need your help. I can't begin to tell you how rewarding it is for an individual, because you get more back than what you give out.
A lot of the volunteer work I have done has been working with seniors by choice, and it is so rewarding to help people that are really my peers. But the appreciation from their side and the gratification from my side that I'm able to help somebody else is just amazing.
I'm a volunteer engagement leader with RSVP.
A lot of folks who are retired, wondering, what am I going to do with myself? Or, gee, I have, some skills and they're not being used. The RSVP is a good place to see where you can match those skills up.
There are so many people that need your help. I can't begin to tell you how rewarding it is.
I do the volunteer work because of how good it makes me feel.
I can't put it any better than those folks can. I do marketing and public relations for RSVP. I think it's a terrific program, but when you listen to those guys talk about why they donate hundreds of hours of their time in some cases, I can't top that. So one final thing I wanted to say very quickly was, and Stacy had touched on this. One other need, which I think is going to become a much bigger need immediately, is volunteer programs, opportunities, and ability to meet folks where English is not their primary language. And in order to do that, we need volunteers who can speak multiple languages, whether it's Arabic or Farsi or Spanish or Korean or Vietnamese. That is, I think, a very big need, and it's going to be a bigger need as time goes on. If anyone here is interested in doing that, one of the groups that we work with is a group called HOGAR Services, and HOGAR help shepherd people through the immigration process. So if there's anybody who wants to help other folks become citizens and become citizens and immigrants, immigrating in the country and become citizens, again, we definitely need people. And secondly, the Literacy Council, which is headquartered not that far from here, of Northern Virginia, they are always looking for folks who can speak multiple languages or two languages. It is a really big need. You don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to have a million, just the ability, most of the groups we work with, they'll train you to do a lot of this stuff. So if you're interested in doing something, don't be scared off by saying, oh, well, I've never taught or I've never done this. The beauty of these volunteer organizations is they will train you to do these things. And it's a great way to get experience in something maybe you've never thought about doing or you want to do. And thank you again for holding this program in general, because I think the senior population in this area is such an important segment to be served, and you're just really helping out by doing this.